Hey, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully, we're having a wonderful Sunday out there, and we've got a couple different storm systems to talk about, some currently ongoing and some on the way this week that will bring pretty high impacts, I think, from some snowfall to heavy rain, strong winds, and maybe even a bit of a severe weather risk. And then we're going to talk about that long range pattern. I'll tell you what I'm seeing as we start to get a little bit closer to Christmas time, and eventually, here as we go another week or so down the road, I'll probably give you my preliminary white Christmas forecast on who I think has the best shot and who I think is probably going to be out of luck this year. With that said, if you're new to the channel, welcome. And if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and do so. Like the video, hit that bell for the latest notifications, and comment. Let me know where you're watching from. We did pass 17,000 subscribers yesterday, so super exciting. And I appreciate all of you joining us here as we've had some pretty incredible growth over the past month or so. And it means the world to me. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive on into things and start talking about the weather here. And looking at satellite imagery, you can kind of pick out our areas of interest. We've got one in the northeast, we've got one in the south, and then one into the northern plains. Now, that first area up into the northeast is moving away, but did bring some snow overnight. If you're watching up there, let me know how much you picked up, especially in some of those areas that haven't seen a lot so far this year. If you happen to get any snow in Connecticut, Rhode Island, or parts of Massachusetts that hasn't seen much snow, definitely let me know. Same story for you folks in New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine. Again, I would love to hear those reports. So that one we will talk about, but that one moving out of here will not be a concern on down the road. But what we do have left are these other two areas. We've got a southern piece of energy and a northern piece of energy, and these two are going to kind of work on their own for a little bit, but eventually combine as we go into this week and likely create quite the storm system and quite the boundary of polar / Arctic air and more humid, warm Gulf air, and that could definitely lead to a pretty strong storm system forming. Now, as for radar, let's go ahead and start with our first area. Like I mentioned, seeing some snow here up into Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, even upstate New York, and I think we even had snow down in Massachusetts overnight. Again, I'd love to hear your reports, especially down in this way, on if you did end up picking up anything on the ground, but I definitely see at least the northern suburbs of Boston up towards Manchester and even back up towards Dover, Portland, Maine, likely picking up on some snow here as we've had cold air locked in for a while. So cold air definitely was not a problem this time around. It was more or less, did you get anything to actually fall from the sky? Which is, I think, a little bit more enjoyable to deal with that problem compared to the warm air problem. Nothing I hate more than a 33-degree rain, and I'm sure many of you would agree with that as well. Now, other than that, you can see these other two pieces of energy I kind of toyed with. Here's the southern piece, really all the way down into Mexico and up into Texas, and then our northern piece currently into the southern prairies of Canada and into the northern plains of the United States. Now, like I mentioned, and I'll even mention we do have a little piece of energy working ashore kind of into the Washington coastline, bringing some active weather. But as I mentioned, these pieces are not going to fully combine just yet. They're going to kind of work on their own for a day or so. But it's once they combine in a couple of days that I think things are going to get a little bit more exciting or active, maybe not exciting, depending on what kind of weather you like. And we'll talk about that for sure. Now, watches, warnings, advisories. We do have some scattered winter weather advisories in the Northeast for that current system working on through, mainly in those higher elevations that are going to see that snow really stick on the roadways is where we have that concern, and you can see that on the map here. Other than that, down the East Coast, really just some fog this morning in some places. And through other parts of the country east of the Mississippi, not a whole lot going on for your Sunday. Now, back out into the northern plains, a different story. In fact, we've got blizzard warnings into portions of the prairies of Montana there. We've got wind advisories through the Dakotas, winter weather advisories, even some winter storm warnings scattered there into the pink as our northern piece of energy really begins to take hold and start that kind of progress eastward and southward. Now, if we go ahead and kind of give you the meteorology in minutes here, or kind of just the overall atmospheric setup. And sorry, I'm going to pull my mic up a little bit. But right now, if we look at our 500 millibar height wind, and again, this is wind about halfway up in the atmosphere in terms of mass, or generally this is probably going to be about 6 kilometers or so, give or take 4 or 5 miles up from the surface. And you'll notice right now, you can pick out our areas of active weather. We've got this kind of jet streak over the Northeast. That's creating some lift. We've got what was formerly a Baja low, meaning it kind of originated from back here into Baja, California, now over portions of Oklahoma and Texas. That's leading to some diffluence here, or some lift over that region, and we're seeing showers like I showed you on radar. And then you see this big area of the northern jet stream. This tells me we have a boundary in place. We have cold air to the north and less cold air, not necessarily warm, but less cold air to the south. And that's really picking up these winds here in the jet stream. So you can see it all quite well on what's currently happening out there. Now, if I time this out over the next couple of days, what's likely to happen is our southern piece of energy is going to kind of get slingshot towards the Ohio Valley by this dip in the jet stream. Now, they're not necessarily going to combine quite yet, but this will bring active weather to the Mississippi Valley, the Tennessee Valley, the Ohio Valley, even into the Mid-Atlantic with some rainfall early this week. And that gets out here. And then what happens is this big trough really begins to become quite amplified. And what I mean by that is it digs really far south. It kind of becomes very elongated. You can see the top of this trough all the way up into Canada, the bottom of it getting all the way down into Mexico. And very positively tilted here, meaning it is just kind of getting its act together. It's just starting the process of getting stronger, we'll say. And eventually it does that. It does get stronger. It turns neutral here by about Wednesday, meaning, again, a strengthening trough, likely storm system strengthening as well with it here on the eastern side, and then turns negatively tilted, and that's when we could get a pretty strong storm system with some strong winds, some snowfall, and some heavy rain here into the northeast. Notice how strong these winds are up into the upper levels. We're talking 110, 111 knots. That's probably near 120, 125 miles an hour. Again, not at the surface, but above our head, indicating a lot of energy and some clashing air masses. And then that eventually pulls out here and cold air settles in by around the latter part of this coming work week into next weekend. It's going to be an active week for sure is what that tells me. But before we get there, let's go ahead and break down kind of the near term a little bit more and give you an idea of what's coming on down the pipeline. Now, right now, like I mentioned, we have that snow in the northeast. That's working out. So if you're watching this video in the afternoon, it's likely gone by now. But I did want to mention it briefly. That does work through. And then by this evening, clearing out through the northeast. And then you can notice here comes that next storm system by your Monday afternoon. And that'll bring its own active weather here. You'll notice some snow and rain kind of getting into the picture. But we'll break that down a little bit more in depth. But you'll notice we're not done after today, but I do think today we will get a little bit of a lull in between our next little piece of energy tomorrow. Now, out west, we do have winter storm conditions out here. Like I mentioned, blizzard warnings up into eastern portions of Montana with that blowing snow going to be a concern, those whiteout conditions. And you can see that this afternoon, snow falling into the higher Rockies. But here comes the blizzard conditions right around here. It's overnight tonight. This is probably going to be about 7, 8, 9 p.m. Western time. And then, subtract or add an hour, for mountain time here into Montana. But you'll notice definitely some snowy conditions and very windy conditions. And if you don't know how to tell, see these little isobars, see how close they are together. This is a very strong pressure gradient right into here over Montana. That's really going to pick up the winds, pick up the snow, and blow it around like crazy over these open fields that we have with the topography out here. And then eventually that even kind of swings on down into the Dakotas a little bit. But definitely a snowy, windy kind of setup into portions of the west today, overnight tonight. This is into tomorrow afternoon. Some of that snow even getting down into Colorado, New Mexico, and just some scattered snow squalls and snow showers, I think, on kind of the downsloping side of the Rockies here into eastern Wyoming, Montana, down into portions of Colorado, New Mexico, and some of that could even get out into the plains by your Monday afternoon and evening. Now, if we kind of take a look at all of this and what snow is to come, this is snow over the next 72 hours, some snow into the higher terrains of the Cascades, probably about half a foot to a foot, give or take. Now, the highest peak's going to see a little bit more, a little bit less the further you go down the mountain. Another kind of hot spot here into Idaho with potentially upwards of a foot still to come. And then we get out here into Montana and surrounding areas. Not a lot of snow is going to fall. We're talking maybe 3 to 5 inches, but the winds are going to be so strong that that'll blow around enough that it still warrants those blizzard conditions. Remember, blizzard condition does not mean a ton of snow is falling. It just means that there will be whiteout conditions due to the wind combined with the snow. In fact, it doesn't even have to be snowing. There could be previous snow on the ground that gets blown around by a storm, and you can get blizzard warnings. So don't think because there's a blizzard warning that a ton of snow is on the way, but there still will be high impacts to travel is really what that means. And then you'll notice down into Colorado, even some snow likely on the way from the next couple of days. Alrighty, let's go ahead now and talk about the East. Like I said, kind of a couple pieces of energy that we're working with. This is this afternoon, and I do think we are going to see some snow up here into northern Minnesota, into the western upper peninsula of Michigan there, and even into extreme northern Wisconsin there along the Michigan border. And this is why we have winter weather advisories and even some winter storm warnings in this region for this little storm system as it works on through. Note, though, not the only piece of energy we're watching. Check out all this precipitation down into portions of the Mid-South. And I'll also add, there is some disagreement between the models. I mentioned clearing out earlier in the Northeast. That was the high-resolution rapid refresh. The NAM still showing some snow squalls left over. It's possible, but I think normally the NAM kind of overdoes precipitation a little bit. So, we'll see if that pans out. But either way, do be aware of the difference between the models. Now, we go into this evening, and like I mentioned, then definitely beginning to clear out into the Northeast. Some flurries may be left around, but nothing you can't handle. But we go back down into the southern Mississippi Valley. We've got heavy rain from Arkansas back through Memphis, Little Rock, likely getting some rain this evening down into northern Alabama, northern Mississippi, western Kentucky, Tennessee, and then there into the boot of Missouri, seeing some heavy rain overnight tonight. We get towards the midnight hour, and this shield of rain works east. So places like Greenville, Spartanburg, Asheville, Knoxville, into Pikeville, Kentucky, Blacksburg, and plenty of areas waking up for your Monday morning commute with a lot of rain. But that's not the only story. Check out what's happening up north. Heavy snow into the Dakotas, into portions of Canada here, and into northern Minnesota as that storm system begins to crank up. Now, we go through your Monday afternoon. This shield of rain works to the east, heavy rain into portions of the Northeast. But notice we are concerned about a little bit of an ice and snow event into the Northeast Monday afternoon. Now, it's going to be the interior Northeast, not your I-95 corridor, which per usual is going to get some rain. And trust me, I'm tired of talking about rain on the I-95 corridor as much as you folks living there are tired of seeing it. But I will add, winter's very early. We're not even to Christmas yet. And normally some of your best nor'easters in that area come January, February, sometimes even into March. So do not lose hope. A lot of winter left. But it is a good sign that the interior of the Northeast is going ahead and picking up on some snow. And like I said, ice could also be a bit of a concern with that during your Monday evening as that works on through. And definitely noting some snowfall there and even some snow left into the northern plains. Now, it's also at this point, we'll get into Tuesday afternoon that we see some more rain. And I'm not going to say I'm probably, I am slightly concerned about a little bit of a severe weather risk down here into portions of Georgia, the Carolinas, and maybe even Alabama and the Florida Panhandle Tuesday afternoon. I do think we will have enough instability and some wind shear return for a bit of a severe weather risk down that way. Like I said, on your Tuesday, we'll monitor it. I'll keep you up to date, but definitely something worth noting. And you'll notice at this same point in time, more snow picking up out into the plains. Now, that's as far as our mesoscale model gets us, but what kind of impacts are we going to see from all of this? Well, let's take a look at our rainfall totals. This is from WeatherWise, a great app that you can download or look it up on the internet, web.weatherwise.app. They've got a ton of great products, so definitely go and check them out. But this is the next 3 days rainfall. Your key at the top of the screen here, and you'll notice a good area down here of about 3 inches or so, give or take, into southern Alabama, southern Georgia here, and then even up into the upstate of South Carolina. A pretty good soaking coming from this, and really a corridor all the way from Lynchburg, Roanoke, down to the Gulf here into the Charlotte area, right along that I-85 corridor, going to likely pick up on the chunk of the rainfall. And this is just through the next 3 days, like I mentioned. And then some QPF even up into the Northeast. Now, some of this will be snow, some of this will be ice, but definitely do note that the overall track of this system is from the Gulf all the way up into the Northeast. Now, as for snowfall, I do think we are going to get some more, and I will mention a lot of what you're seeing on this model is what has already fallen today, so let me back this up just a little bit, and you'll notice that little burst of snow Monday afternoon. It's not a lot, but it does add some more snow totals, really to places that have already seen it. I don't think anybody new is going to pick up snow out of this. But if you've seen snow over the past day or two, do expect a little bit more on your Monday afternoon and potentially also some ice. Here is the ice forecast from our blended models. Now, not a lot showing up, but a glaze upwards of 1/10 of an inch could cause problems here. in some of these areas where some of that cold air gets trapped at the surface, but it's kind of warm above us. That definitely could lead to some ice. And then even into portions of Ontario here into Canada, need to watch for that icing potential for your Monday evening, especially during that commute time. Some of these roadways may not be fully treated, some of the back roads, and definitely just be mindful of that if you live in any of this area of New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, or even portions of southern Maine. All right, let's go ahead now and time out the next storm system, the bigger one that we were talking about. Like I showed you on our wind map, it's going to start kind of positively tilted here. This is Tuesday, and then we get into Wednesday. We begin to see this negative, or this neutrally tilted trough rather, but eventually kind of curving upwards and becoming negatively tilted as it swings on through the east during your Wednesday afternoon and into your Thursday. And then behind it, this is a big pocket of cold air that is slowly going to work on in, and we're right back in the freezer by late next work week. So you're going to probably feel a bit of a warm up early this week. It's going to be nice. You're going to think, all right, we're done with that cold pattern, and not quite. Another shot of cold air after this storm system. But the good news is I do see another warm up after that one if you're a fan of warmer weather. But again, I wouldn't get too used to it. I think the rest of December is really going to be a bit of a roller coaster, up and down, and then kind of sideways at times as well. And I think we've already seen that so far this month. Now, granted, it's been pretty cold, but we've seen storm and then quieter weather and then storm and then quieter weather. I do think that is kind of the theme for the rest of the month here. Now, what is this next storm going to look like? Well, this is the GFS. We already looked at all this, so we'll skip ahead to kind of where we left off here. Here we go. This is, we'll pick this up Tuesday afternoon is where we left off. You'll notice here is that positively tilted trough. At this point, you'll notice we do have this big kind of boundary of Arctic and polar air trapped up into the plains. It's going to be cold. We're going to have some snow showers lingering, but that begins to clash with this warmer flow out of the Gulf, and this is when low pressure is going to begin to develop. Now, I think it's going to be a couple of waves of low pressure. You'll notice here's wave one, kind of swings on through the northeast and brings some rain into the southeast, and I do think mainly rain for most folks. Now, you'll notice a little bit of ice there still showing up, even potentially another round Tuesday into Wednesday. We'll need to watch that. But for most folks, it's going to be an all-rain event here up and down the East Coast, outside of some of those maybe higher elevations with some ice into the northeast, or maybe even some lower elevations that get that cold air kind of trapped in. We'll need to watch it, and we'll talk about it more as we get into mesoscale range. But here comes another wave of low pressure, a lot of rain showing up, but you'll notice Wednesday afternoon, this begins to turn into a bit of an anafront, meaning we've got precipitation on the warm side and the cold side. We've got some snow breaking out here on the western fringe of this low pressure through the mountains of even North Carolina, up through Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, potentially far eastern Ohio here, up into western New York State Wednesday afternoon. And you get into Wednesday evening, folks, this storm really begins to strengthen. We're down to about 990 millibars during the evening hours of Wednesday. And we've got a potent squall line now working off the Atlantic coast, gusty winds, heavy wet snow, likely into portions of upstate New York, down into Pennsylvania, heavy windy rain along the I-95 corridor from Philly all the way up to Boston and into Maine as well. We've got rain in Vermont, New Hampshire, as we're on the warm conveyor side of things. But the storm works through, the cold air comes behind it, and we do get that changeover to snow for some folks. And like I mentioned, a feisty storm system and heavy snow up into eastern Canada as well, well inland, not necessarily into the maritime provinces, but definitely a heavy snow event for you folks. And then that cold air kind of locks into place behind it, and we're back in the freezer by next Friday. Now, that was the GFS model. What about the European? Well, it's pretty similar, folks. It's not all that different. Like I said, wave after wave of precipitation. Then the snow breaks out Wednesday afternoon. Now, not as heavy on the European. The European's a little less excited about this cold air catching up to the precipitation. A little bit less on the heavy snow, but still a strong storm system with a feisty squall line here, working all the way through southern New England out into the Atlantic Ocean. Very cold air, advecting behind the cold front. It's going to feel like winter again, folks. Like I said, it's going to be a roller coaster here. And then, much like the GFS, pulling this northward up into Canada. Now, and then I will also mention the lake effect machine picks up right again after that as we get a favorable fetch or a favorable wind pattern over the Great Lakes here. And that, once again, produces some more snowfall. Now, let's take a look at the ensembles. I think that's going to be a pretty good way to kind of, balance out the forecast here, if you will. Starting with the GFS, and like I said, the operational run was a little more excited about snow, and you can even see that in the ensembles. Check out this signal, and this has grown a bit, even down here into North Carolina. We've even got a couple members showing snow as far south as North Georgia. Now, that's probably a stretch, but I do think the mountains of North Carolina, the mountains of Tennessee, up into the mountains of Virginia, West Virginia could get some snow out of this. In fact, a pretty good signal, 1 to 3 plus inches of snow in that region. And then you'll notice a big burst of snow up here into upstate New York through the Adirondacks, back down towards the Catskills, into the mountains of Vermont, picking up some snow here. The GFS even trying to get snow down into Scranton at northern New Jersey and kind of some surrounding areas for that Wednesday into Thursday timeframe, and then brings a ton of snow up into Canada. And you'll notice the lake effect machine once again picks up. Now, that's the GFS. What about the European and its ensemble members? A little less excited. Here's the storm. You'll notice a lot less excited down towards North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia. Really not a whole lot on the European, but you will notice kind of some scattered snow showers on the backside of this cold front on the European through Ohio, Indiana, and surrounding areas. Now, not a lot, but you will also see here the lake effect is plentiful here into Toronto, back out into western Michigan, the northern upper peninsula of Michigan. Lake Erie, seeing plenty of lake effect here on the European model, just less snow on the interior locations through upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, way less snow down into Pennsylvania and the Virginias on the European. Now, it's something we're just going to have to iron out, folks. There's not really one correct answer. I think the GFS has potential to be right. I think the European also has potential to be right. We'll just kind of have to watch it, wait and see. If I had to lean one way or the other, honestly, I'm going to lean a little bit closer to the European right now. I think the GFS might be overdoing it, especially in the locations a little further south. Through North Carolina and the Virginias, at least with the storm itself. Now, northwest flow could kick in after the fact. That could produce some snow, but I'm skeptical we're going to get a band of snow to set up on the colder side of that front. But we'll see. It's happened before. It would not be impossible, and we'll probably know a lot more through the coming days. In fact, I can guarantee you we will know a lot more through the coming days. All right, after this storm, what's next? Kind of the pattern getting a little bit closer to Christmas time here. Well, like I said, we've got that big trough. That is what you're seeing on the map here. All this blue showing up. That's the storm system we just talked about into the middle of this coming week. That gets out of here, and then a ridging builds in. And this is generally going to promote warmer temperatures. Now, about 7 or so days from now, there is a signal for cold air damming. And what I mean by that is cold air kind of getting trapped down the backside of the Appalachian chain. So maybe not everybody seeing warmer temperatures, but overall, I do expect to warm up into next weekend and into the week after. But after that, there are signs that another trough builds in. You'll notice more blue showing up. This could once again return a cooler and stormier pattern, really just in time for Christmas. This is the 20th of December, and that could hold on into Christmas itself. Now, anyone who's a big fan of the idea of a white Christmas in the East, do not get your hopes too high. It's going to take a miracle. It always does to get snow outside of the Rockies or outside of the lake effect areas on Christmas, but it is still a possibility. I wouldn't say anybody in the country is ruled out from a white Christmas yet, besides probably the usual suspect places along the Gulf Coast. But plenty of time to figure it out. I will say the models have trended a little bit cooler, a little bit wetter in that Christmas time frame, and I'll definitely keep you up to date. And as for temperatures, let me back this up a little bit. Obviously, it's been chilly. We are warming up early this week. Notice that red, and then back in the freezer by the middle of this coming week as that big front swings on through, holds on to stay chilly, especially in those CAD areas. Really even into early next week, not this week coming up, but the one after. And then we warm up after that again, and then the models begin to diverge a little bit, but you do notice cooler temperatures once again taking over just in time for Christmas. In fact, this is Christmas Eve, the night of, noticing cooler temperatures into the southeastern and eastern half of the country. Like I said, though, plenty of time for that to change, so we will definitely monitor it. Alrighty, folks, that's all I got for you on this Sunday. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did and you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and do so. Like the video and comment. Let me know where you're watching from. Alrighty, folks, have a great one. Stay safe out there. I'll see you all tomorrow.